Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's good to be here in Madeira Blockchain Conference. Thanks so much for taking the time to see us today. Thanks so much for the awesome clicker, giant buttons for seniors. Thank you so much for taking your time to come and visit this beautiful place and also see a little bit of technology. So in this case, it will be, and now for something completely different. This is probably a joke that not everybody will get, Monty Python. So Naoris protocol. That Naoris protocol, our objective was, I'll talk a little bit about my background, the technology, and what led to this. But our objective was to create a technology that would bring together blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. And so bringing Web3 technology to Web2 world, let's say. In essence, basically decentralizing methods and systems that are traditionally centralized. So our objective is to turn every device into a trusted validator node from a perspective of trust, resilience, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Creating this, what we call a decentralized cybersecurity mesh that is based on some principles. Principles of not being able to be the platform, so if you're part of it, you cannot be taken out. It's permissionless, incredibly neutral as well, while providing you with the capability to use potentially your infrastructure, either on the cloud or locally, to actually back your capabilities to either defend yourself or to know that you're under attack or that the part of your ecosystem is actually no longer trusted because of some sort of subversion or hacking. So just quoting here our chief scientist, our chief of strategy, Mr. David Holtzman, which is a former chief scientist and CFO of IBM. As IoT grows, the vulnerabilities grow with it, not linearly, but exponentially. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in future slides. And also a quote here from our past ambassador, former chairman of NATO Intelligence Committee, Mr. Kjell Granhagen, and good friend of mine. We don't need to play a better game against cyber criminals. We need to play a different game. Just a little bit of context about Naoris protocol. So we started as a research organization. So myself, I was chief of security of a number of multi-billion-dollar companies in Europe. I'll talk a little bit more about myself in the future. But I went to all these events that I usually went to, and I talked to leaders, regulators, CISOs of countries, so chief information security officers of countries and others. And I asked, hey, you are people that understand risk. So people in the board, they don't necessarily understand technology, but they understand risk. Will it make sense to actually bring, quote, quote, nascent technologies at the time, like artificial intelligence and also blockchain technology, to actually help mitigate some of your risks on the realm of cybersecurity? And the answer was very, very positive. Because it's very well known, like my peers and myself as a chief information security officer in the past, that it doesn't matter how much money you spend, eventually you're going to get hacked, right? So the objective was to create a different paradigm. We joined the top 15 accelerators in the world just pre-COVID. Some of them are not in the screen. These are some of the ones that we won or that were finalists at. We entered 12 of them, and we won 9 of them in different areas, from fintech, the biggest fintech accelerator in North America, all the way to defense, telecommunications, and other areas. So it's clear that the protocol that we had created actually worked in very different verticals as long as they were digital systems. So very quickly here, I've been an ethical hacker for 24 years. I'm 38 now. I'm originally from Portugal, Leiria. I have been a global chief of security, as I mentioned before, for a number of multi-billion-dollar companies, both in Europe and also in the UK. I sit in a number of think tanks and boards under the European Union for definition of, for example, future threats, risks, intelligence-related matters, and also areas of futurism like smart cities and technology to embed in them. I also advise a number of nation states on cyber war, cyber terrorism, and cyber espionage, which led me to meet a lot of the people that actually ended up joining this project. So there we have also David Holtzman, as I mentioned before, the former CTO of IBM in our team, in our core team. As you can see, our list of advisors are, we are supported by by a number of former leaders of NATO, a number of generals, of a number of nation states under the European Union, ENISA, which is the European National Security Agency, and also NATO umbrellas, including a number of nation states cyber commands as well, which we work quite a bit. We also have a number of very well-known hackers and researchers that are part of our team, and we collaborate with a number of universities, both in Portugal and also out of Portugal, so in Germany, in the US as well. So here I wanted to say a shout out for Nuno Almeida and Miguel Oliveira, which we have PhD students under them and under partners of theirs that are working with us, and we push out papers that are internationally recognized, let's say, and peer-reviewed by large organizations that we end up publishing together. And there's also people from FEUP, Universidade do Porto as well, and from US universities, University of Mississippi, which I also wanted to commend. So let's talk about what matters here. We are talking about a $10 trillion loss for the world, directly and indirectly related to cyber issues by 2025. It's probably going to be a bigger number because we're already at basically 7 trillion, sorry. And you think, how much is that? Well, that's about like 6 or 7% of the world's GDP. Obviously, this is not sustainable. This is more than any other investment effort in anything that is done to the world or in all of the world. And it's probably only going to get worse due to the massive inflation of non-standardized devices that are called Internet of Things, as I call it, IoT, Internet of Trouble. So, in other words, the current model that we have is not really working, obviously, from a perspective of cybersecurity, and that applies to Web 1, to Web 2. Web 3 obviously is a highly resilient environment, and most of the hacks that we see in that space are either due to smart contract hacking, which basically are subversions of code, which has nothing to do with Web 3 per se. Web 3 is a cryptographically highly resilient environment, but Web 3 is not a pure thing. Web 3 lives and is served by Web 2 services and principles and systems and processes. So it's very important to actually apply a high level of security to what is the risk of Web 3, which is Web 2. It's everything that serves Web 3 in the end. Having said that, 99.9% of the world is Web 2. Right? I mean, everything that allows society to survive, from critical infrastructure to other regulated spaces, government, etc. So 99% of the world is centralized. Devices act as a siloed point of failure. So there's a truism in IT, which is if you have a system, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's one of these or a server or whatever it is. It is a point of failure from a cyber perspective to the network it lives in. And that network becomes a point of failure to all the organizations that are connected to that network. In other words, a malicious attacker can actually leverage a service, a device, to its benefit and move laterally and vertically across the business, eventually taking it over, ransomwaring it, exfiltrating data, really whatever they want to do over time. The time of detection for breaches right now, according to the latest report from our partner, IBM, it's 287 days. That's how long it takes, in average, to detect an attacker. And all the time in between is what we call living off the land. And that's when they get detected. Because out of the top 500 companies in the world, we know that all of them have been hacked at least once last year, that they know of. And these are the ones that have the most money invested and the most resources to know if they have actually been hacked. So we need to evolve from castles to communities. In the past, all the systems in every sort of business. It doesn't matter. Obviously, now we have businesses that are inherently decentralized, like DeFi, like other services. But in the past, all companies were sort of like a castle model. So you have everything inside the building, you have all the computers, you have firewalls, and everything is kind of sort of controlled and fine. And this central control structure obviously is flawed, and we know every day about the hacks of everything that happen. And I think we need to, I'm sure, and everybody that is supporting us is absolutely sure of this, we need to migrate into a decentralized principle of validation, decision-making, and assurance of whatever we're seeing is actually true, and if we know it's in a secure and trusted state, which is something that you can actually prove in real time, in our case, using Web3 technology to solve problems in Web2. So this is a little bit of a technical approach, but I won't go too much into the technicals. But what you have here is a simple sort of architecture about, you have devices that have validator nodes in our case. So every device gets a validator node. It is a DApp that connects directly to our consensus mechanism. We at Naoris protocol operate from level 0 to level 3. So at layer 3, we use DApps that are basically the agents that connect directly to our consensus mechanism called DPoSec, distributed proof of security. And then that goes all the way to layer 1 and layer 0 as well, which is where the chain operates, or the chains of chains. So the devices have nodes, and the nodes validate each other. They act as watchdogs in an infrastructure. So normally, the more devices you have, locally or in the cloud or whatever, the more complexity you have, the more surface of risk you have, because every device is, as I mentioned before, a point of failure, a point of entry. So under this principle, pretty much the opposite happens. Every device becomes a validator node of every other device, a watchdog of every other device. And the more it expands, the more resilient and trustworthy it becomes. Right? So you can see the application for these, obviously, for highly critical environments, defense, critical infrastructure, highly regulated systems, and so on. So the value of shared proof is that you can actually differentiate, potentially, or a company can differentiate themselves against their competitors. They can say, okay, I can provably show that my infrastructure is safe for my customers, for my third parties, and for ourselves, if they want to. They can also know for sure that their services, their processes, their APIs, etc., are in a trusted state at every point in time, backed by a blockchain that is following ZK principles that they run themselves, so they don't need to trust anybody else. But if they want, they can also have global validations of their truth, let's say. So, quick video here. This is the video that we shared actually on the T-Mobile Championship, which is the biggest technology championship for telecommunications in the world, which were one of the winners in Bonn in Germany. So our distributed proof of security mechanism detects that there is breach on a device. In this case, these are many different devices from IoT, robotic arms, routers, 5G antennas, computers on the cloud, so on. And we had, in a completely different network, a robotic arm, actually in India, that had been breached by an FUD, or fully undetectable piece of malware, that a group that's friend of ours actually shared, that was used against critical infrastructure in Ukraine. That device is, and that was a feed of the arm, and the arm was going crazy and damaging the other robotic arms around it, so on. The threat is not detected by the device, but it's detected by the mesh. So the systems that it is connected to detect it first, and then the mesh reacts to it and achieves consensus if that device is trusted or not, and then it achieves a response. And the response can be directed by the owner. In this case, it is an isolation. The system goes into a self-healing state, let's say, it's kicked out of the network, so it cannot infect other systems. The other systems learn about this. There is a resilience systems that's picked up. Because there are nodes that are backup nodes, they know exactly how the system looked before the breach. from an integrity perspective, a pure integrity perspective, which is an important computing principle in IT. And we can restore this system to its previous state using smart contracts only, no human interaction, adding it back to the mesh and allowing it to become a validator again. Again, no human interaction, completely automated, blockchain following blockchain principles only. So just to give an example here of one of our partners, that's actually a bank of a very large multi-hundred billion dollar family office that invested in us from Canada. Actually, it's a group of banks from Canada and Bahamas. They use our platform to secure their API connections to the third parties. So under a zero trust principle, and also a zero proof of knowledge principle. Well, zero trust basically in cyber means that you suppose that you cannot trust any system, and you only define, for example, certain time frames that systems can connect to other systems and use services from other systems after they have been authenticated. So we go a step further and we say, not only can you do that, but we can actually prove that the systems that you're connected to and the APIs that you're actually accessing are in a trusted state at every point in time, and that's on chain, and that only the owners of this chain can actually see it. So this is a hybrid chain, can be public or private as they want. They can know if their connections to Visa and MasterCard are actually trusted, if there's any tampering with any of the endpoints that are actually dealing with the data. Because in the end, it's all about proof of knowledge. And if you can prove that your systems are in a good state, your processes, your services are in a good state, cryptographically speaking, under consensus, then you know you can trust your data. Because you can have your knowledge. Because you can have all the knowledge to make decisions that you want. But if it's not good knowledge and it doesn't come from a good source, you're going to make bad decisions. So we allow for good decisions to be made. They can know if the user, for example, downloads an app into a phone that they don't control. They can know the state of the application. They know if somebody tampered with the banking application or not. Of course, you can imagine the same thing for wallets. And if it's not the case, if the system is actually in an unsecure state, or there's malware there, or the app has had code injected into it or whatever, then you cannot make transactions out of this wallet. And the hacker that may be connected to your device that you don't know about becomes a sad boy that day. It can prevent transactions if the device isn't trusted. It can prove its data sources are trusted in real time. And it can share real proof of compliance with third parties and regulators. So I had a really good conversation yesterday with Tommaso yesterday from the DORA that was sitting on the panel. Obviously, we're working with other regulators already. And they are not regulators, because they use then, DORA uses regulators, are going to use regulators from the nation states themselves, but this is a way for regulators to directly regulate systems, because we, with our nodes, can directly interrogate the systems, just like if we were an auditor all the time, without it being capable of being tampered with. So we provide really provable information assurance for any sort of vertical, as long as it has a digital system running. It can be IoT related for healthcare, for robotics, which we have partners on that area with the car manufacturers as well, for supply chains, for investment value and risk. So imagine if you're an investment house and you're getting like your US dollar versus euro or your BTC versus Ethereum price from a third party, you must be sure that that data is good and it hasn't been compromised. Otherwise, your $10 billion that's on the line for that trade might actually be a massive hole for you. And this has happened before. It will happen more and more. So just talking about some of our integrations, we are partnering with IBM, integrating with some of their key tools, looking to integrate also at hardware level with other vendors that are not on screen, because it's a bit hush-hush at the moment. T-Mobile, obviously, after being winners of the challenge, we are now looking to integrate with their critical environments and others. Level 1 Robotics, it's one of the biggest companies that makes and programs the big robot arms that makes cars, and Tesla and General Motors and other spaces like that. Obviously, it's a revolution on the robotic space because all of them can actually act as nodes and validate each other for integrity. No, they are not tampered with, and that there can be nothing malicious coming out of that specific line of assembly, for example. And the Cypher Bank, and we also have other banks, very large banks, that are in the pipeline. But in all the accelerators that you guys saw before, we have created proof of concepts that are unique. So we, as a protocol, we are not live to the public yet. We started under a very critical, kind of like defense, critical environment application only. And we're now moving into more of an enterprise, and eventually next year, we'll have some sort of like TG or airdrop, and we'll make the protocol live. We don't compete with anybody, so we don't want to compete with any other protocol. We don't want to compete with the Ethereums. We don't want to compete with anybody, even though we use the EVM, so it's EVM compatible. We have our own consensus mechanism. We can work with any other blockchain at layer 2, at layer 1, whatever they like. We can work with any dApps, our own or others, and you can leverage this principle that's ours and build things on top of it or connect to our capabilities, inheriting the capabilities of the protocol. So integrity, availability, and also confidentiality and trust of everything that you want to connect to, even if it's legacy. Some pictures from our collaborations and partners. There we have the former White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, which is helping us actually reach the US market and deal with defense organizations and others. We are working a lot with North Africa as well. In Africa in general, we have a consultancy company in Africa called Naoris Consulting. We have had massive interest from African governments, mainly Morocco, in other institutions, critical institutions, from banking to insurance to defense to ports and railway, etc. Africa is in a unique place. Also is Southeast Asia and South America, because they don't have a lot of legacy things holding them back. Because just imagine if you have like a group of vehicles and one of them is a tractor and all the other are Ferraris. Everybody needs to move at the speed of the tractor. They don't have that problem. They can jump directly either from paper or very legacy systems directly into blockchain, which is extremely exciting for them, for us, for everybody. Collaborations with IBM, also partnerships with centers of excellency for cyber across the European Union, and of course the T-Mobile approach, education, etc. So just for you guys to have an idea, we're right now at or close to 15 billion devices that are online. Okay, these are not IoT devices in general, they're just online devices. And we're going to move to approximately 21 billion according to Statista.com by 2026. And as David Holtzman said, as IoT grows, the vulnerabilities grow with it, not linearly, but exponentially, and we're here to help with that. Our objective is to reduce this $10 trillion damage to the world in the next 10 years by 1 order of magnitude, so taking a zero out. And our objective is to have at least 2.5% of this market in 3 years. Some talk here about or showing some of our investors. They are Web2 strategic family office investors. We have raised 31 million to date. Started raising last year as part of the accelerators and their partners. And a lot of Web3 groups that obviously see the interest on bridging Web 2 and Web 3, which is really what we want to do. Just a list of our partners that I mentioned before, many more here, a lot of protocols, layer 0s, layer 1s, etc. If you are here, feel still from yesterday, and you want to partner with us, you want us to create something that's not off the shelf, that's unique for you on top of our protocol and directly collaborate and connect your protocol with ours, please talk to me or go to our website and go to our Telegram, ask any questions you want. And that's it. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much and open to questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's make it quick so we can go for lunch at midday. Any questions? In the meantime, reminding you that there is always workshop going on, so you can choose between the keynote speakers or also the workshops. Questions about cybersecurity, this type of what he presented? Any comments? Come on, come on. One over here. Now he's coming with the microphone. He's morning jogging, you see.
Yes.
That's the way of having an extra biscuit.
Helps by gravity. Yeah.
Okay. Hope I don't ask too many questions. Just a quick one. What are you guys doing on the psychological side of this? And what I mean, or do you know if there's anything happening? Because if you think a lot of what's happening in cybersecurity and that side of it is people are actually attacking things they wouldn't normally go and break into a building and do it physically, because it's almost like a game to them, because there's no real person or interaction with something. So people feel like they're almost playing computer games when they're hacking into something. So is there anything that's been done on teaching people or education to say, look, guys, this is actually wrong. You're actually stealing people's own money. You're doing this. Because I think they see it as a game. And having been in the DeFi space for a while, people just create things because they think, oh, well, it's not real people. It's somebody called Crypto Monkey or something, so it's not a real person. Is there anything on this that's also been done on the psychological side and that side to prevent people doing this and them understanding it? Because I think that's an important part.
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. We ourselves were actually collaborating from an education perspective with various universities on, I wouldn't say from a psychological approach towards the adversary or the threat actor, because I think, how can I say, I'm an ethical hacker myself, but the methods are the same if you're good or bad. So it really depends on, on your moral stance, I guess, in the end, and if it is an easy target, because let's say you're potentially not malicious, and I'm just assuming a bunch of stuff, but let's say I'm potentially not malicious, but if I walk across the road and I'm hungry and I need money, and there's, all the doors are open, all the houses, and nobody's there, maybe I'm not even a bad person. I'm going to go in and see what's going on, right? I'm not saying myself, but potentially. What we're focusing on is we just assume that, yes, there's going to be threats, and we're going to make it as hard as it can be for you to walk on that street and look at the doors that are open. So all of them are going to be closed and locks are on, and you're probably not even going to think, I'm not going to enter, it's a lot of work, right? So what we're doing is we're leveraging the whole infrastructure to defend every single device. So in other words, if you wanted to enter that house, or open that door, you would have to physically break open every door in the whole road for you to enter that house, right? And that makes it very, very hard for you to even think about that. So you'll probably go somewhere else where the door is open.
I appreciate that's what you guys are doing, but I think it's an important element that another person needs to take.
Even though that's not really kind of like our remit, I completely agree with that, but having said that, from my own experience, most of the malicious hackers that I've met and that I've dealt with, they are people that in the beginning, when they started doing this, and of course, the conviction rates are so low, and in some countries are completely inexistent, that it's just easy crime, right? So there's no consequence. You can do it and there's no consequence, and it's low cost. Right? So it's hard, I would say it's hard to stop. The only way that you can deal with that is to actually improve people's lives and quality of life.
Yeah. And also I think that attacking a faceless person,
makes it easier.
Yep.
Of course. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. A big applause for David Carvalho. Thank you very much, David.